All right, welcome back to another Wright Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright, still on cold day here in North Carolina.
It's still cold. I woke up and I was every day, I'm going to work out. I'm going to get after it. And then I looked at the temperature and it was like 15 degrees. And I said, oh, gosh. But then I said to myself, you know what, Paul? The YMCA is indoors. And I said, but I got to go outdoors to get indoors. And not feeling it. Just.
Hey, in your self-talk, do you call yourself Paul?
So I says to myself, Paul, no, I don't speak in the third person. I do, man. I'm tipping the scales. I don't like the numbers I see. And Brian, you're doing a great job. I know you're making some efforts to change the way you eat a little bit,
Just
work
diet.
out a little more.
Yeah, just trying to eat a little bit better. Again, it's such a hard thing being an ex-athlete, right? Because you had motivation. I'm not
Yeah.
really vain enough. I'm married. I'm not trying to pursue anybody. I think if you see me drastically start looking better, you need to consider, like, what is my mental state, right? What am I trying to get out of this? And so that is the challenge. I think for a lot of ex-athletes, man, I think there's some really disciplined guys who are really good about getting after it and doing,
Yeah.
what's best for the health. But I think in the most part, it's like, dude, I've worked out, and again, it's been 20 years since I've had anything athletically that I had to work out for. But, you did that for, I don't know, 10 years, probably from 15 to 25 for me. And, it's like, I did it for a reason. Now, if I'm a little fat, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's more to love, right? But I kept after baseball, I probably kept running and I stayed in pretty good shape for 10, 12 years. And then I hit 40. And once you start having for me, my third and fourth kid, just like time becomes really tight. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I could push out is like, look, I would rather spend time with my kids than effectively go work out and that sort of thing. And I know some of it too, like with my oldest, we would actually wake up super early, like at 5:30 in the morning, and go to the Y together. And she was motivated to go do for softball and work out for basketball. So we were doing that for a while. So there is definitely it's definitely something you can do with your kids, but I'd rather focus on more sport specific things than just generally working out.
Absolutely.
And then again, it's not. I don't think it's selfish to go work out, but
Oh, no, 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 no.
you
I think it takes a different discipline than I have, right, at this point in my life.
yeah, certainly. So hey, keep up the good work. I'm gonna keep committing to commit, and then hopefully that commitment turns into an actual commit. So big news in the sports world, but a little bit in the political arena yesterday. So the House passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which essentially said that if you're born a male, you play male sports. If you're born a female, you play female sports. So it's effectively eliminating transgender athletes and realistically male athletes from playing in women's sports. So a really big thing going on, and it's been an interesting and really wild time the past 5 6 years when as this has started coming up and become more relevant in the news and in sports. And Brian, you and I both have daughters who play women's athletics, right? You with lacrosse and dance, and me with softball and basketball. And I know this is something we've talked about, and really, it can be a divisive topic, but it seems to be one that we should just use some logic.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to common sense. I think
Yeah.
a lot. The people that I guess maybe that were for it get caught up on the compassion side. Maybe I'm not real sure there's no logic around it though, because anybody who's like we've had girls and you have a boy who's seventh grade is probably stronger than most girls and that are seniors from high school. So just imagine if he was a junior senior in college competing against another female or at least born female. Even with drugs and testosterone, it just makes a huge difference. And so I'm not sure how we arrived at it. It feels like maybe at the edge of mental illness. I'm not here to necessarily judge you on what you want to be in your private time, but I think when you start affecting other people, I think that's when logic has to step in, and people have to have opinions that may or may not be popular with everyone.
And the biggest example was Leah Thomas. at the University of Pennsylvania, was a very mid-range average male swimmer, became a woman swimmer.
But a collegiate swimmer. I
A
mean,
collegiate, yeah, so better than
a
this.
collegiate swimmer. It's not like me going out there and saying I'm going
Yeah.
to put on the the bathing suit and swim against female. They would dominate me. But he was a collegiate swimmer. I
Yeah.
think he was just outside of 200. I mean, again, it's impressive in itself. If you're in college swimming, male, female, whatever, it's impressive. But clearly, once he came over to the female side, it was just he dominated, and he wasn't necessarily competing for championships on the male side. And again, if you want to live that lifestyle outside, or if you want to wear a different bathing suit when you're in the pool with the guys, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, but so Thomas set the fastest times of the NCAA season for the 200 and 500 yard freestyle after participating in women's sport. So clearly there are biological advantages that men have over women, and you just shared that. And so you mentioned, and this is something that I was curious about as well, right? Because we're both very, very planted in women should participate with women, men with men. And that's how it should be, right? It just makes the most sense. And realistically, from a safety perspective. So I was curious when this vote happened. So the vote was actually way closer than what I thought it should be. So it was Republicans voted 216 yes. Democrats voted 2 yes, but 206 no. And so that got me thinking, this should not be a political stance. It shouldn't be just vote along party lines because this is the way our party is voting. Right. And so it got me thinking, it's like, why would somebody vote no to this act? So one of the things I saw come up, and this is Representative Susan Bonamici of Oregon. She says, we're already seeing examples of harassment and questioning of girls who may not conform to stereotypical feminine roles.
It's just bizarre. I mean, to me, it doesn't make it's not logical. I think you're trying to be something to a voting pool that everything, your truth is not, there's no such thing as truth or fact, right? And so you end up in a situation where your truth is truth to you, and so we end up with nothing, having any meaning. And if we can't get it to the basics of what a male and female is, we've really lost the ability to communicate. Because it's hard for me to even relate to that. I mean, I'm sure you, like I've got people on both sides of the spectrum from a political standpoint, but if we can't establish what a male and female is, it's hard to come together on anything else. And that's kind of the basics of, hey, take your pants off and let's take a peek,
Yeah, and nobody's saying that, but and on the other side, one of the Democrats who actually voted yes was Representative Seth Moulton from Massachusetts, and this was his quote. He said, "Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenge many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. As a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that." So he's stepping across lines. He's stepping outside of what is expected of him, and say, "Hey, this affects me personally. I've got 2 little girls." And
well, you would think there would be more Democrats who have female children, right? You wouldn't think he would just be the only one who could see that logic, right? But I think a lot of times what happens in those situations, they're able to isolate themselves with means and be in private schools and situations that are kind of protected. They're not really with the general public in a lot of cases, and so I don't think they see the direct correlation. And I think they are peddling for votes. And this is a weird, place to dial, field to dial.
yeah, it's a really tough one. And the one thing this reminded me of too, and I don't know if you remember this commercial, but there was a commercial Nike did. It was called The Toughest. And I looked all over the internet, looked over YouTube. And by saying that, I did some Google searches and asked ChatGPT. But it was called The Toughest, and it featured Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Maya Moore. So 3 of the greatest WNBA players of all time. And they went and played pickup basketball in New York City, right? So they weren't playing against NBA guys. They were playing against just regular men just on a playground, right? Who were And the
Good
commercial,
players. Yeah.
yeah, so they're fine, whatever they were. And the commercial said, hey, they didn't win every game. Yeah, and the commercial talked about kind of some of the adversity they went through when playing and the challenges and the tough moments, and but it showed how women can compete, right? But the commercial made a point of saying, hey, they didn't win every game. And so to me, that says, all right, this is really why men should not compete with women at and from that perspective. These guys are just kind of random dudes playing in New York City. It's not they weren't playing Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman. They were just playing random dudes. And these are supposed to be the three of the greatest of all, three of the greatest of the time for sure. And they couldn't beat just random dudes. Again, not diminishing who they are, what they do, but it just shows the difference between men and women in sports. And if these just random people in New York City are beating them, then what does that say against somebody who's like you said with like Leah Thomas, who's legitimately a college athlete already?
Yeah,
It's not fair.
yeah, no, you're hitting on it. I mean, the reality is you can be equal but different.
Yeah.
I mean, women can do things that guys can't do, and vice versa. And one of the things males have that seems obvious that in most cases there's more muscle mass. Obviously, testosterone causes aggression, and from an evolutionary standpoint, it's been whatever you believe that has been beneficial to the male species, and so. That's still the case. Almost when I watched that commercial, it made it seem like, hey, guys and girls on the athletic court are equal, and that's nonsense. I mean, there's not one female that could go and compete in the NBA. I mean, as good as Clayton Clark is, and a lot of those girls can really play, and they're getting better. I mean, they can't compete at the with the guys, and that's not a knock. I can't compete with NBA guys. I mean,
No.
and so it's not a knock. It's okay to be different. God made us that way, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But it's a weird place that this had. It's weird that Trump even had to I think it's an executive order, or actually it was passed. You just said it was passed.
It was passed in the House, and now it's with Senate, and they've got to do their thing.
It's weird that you even got to pass that. I mean, I bet our founding fathers didn't even think about, hey, we need to make.
Well, they weren't
declaration.
Basketball, to be fair, it wasn't even a sport, but I'm sure that's nothing that they were even considering.
I mean, the Native Americans playing lacrosse, I mean, they may have played with each other, but I'm sure they took a little different approach playing against females. It's crazy that it is. It really just shows the division within our country, right? I think, again, going back to my original statement, if you can't agree on what is female and what is male, it's hard to have any bridges to anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. Title IX is a little over 50 years old now, and that was to allow, because women didn't have those rights 50 years ago, right? They weren't able to compete. They didn't get the same funding, and we saw as recently as the NCAA March Madness tournament a couple of years ago, women still weren't being treated equally with men, right? From a standards perspective, they notoriously showed kind of the weight room situation that they had. It looked like the same one I get at the Holiday Inn, right? When I stay there. And so it's just it's a weird dichotomy to have, hey, we're Title IX, we're for women's rights. But you know what? Let's let men play all women's sports. So we're back to square one. So.
Yeah, and it's in Title IX. I mean, I think we both benefit from it, right? Our daughters going to or playing sports in college, and it's an interesting dichotomy because it's really not in congruence with each other. If you don't believe there's a difference, why do we need Title IX, right? Just hey, if there's a good enough girls softball player, should be good enough to play baseball. If there's a good enough girls lacrosse player, should be good enough to play boys lacrosse, and that's just not how it works. And I'm glad for Title IX. I mean, I'm glad for the opportunities that my daughters have been able to have to play different sports. And I feel like this it's definitely an assault on it because eventually, as that becomes more mainstream as far as not sure what your gender is, I think, if that wouldn't have been put in place, there would have been situations in Purple, North Carolina, that you would have saw a female compete or a male compete in a female sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And really interesting too. So, like I said, both my daughters are playing college softball, and just man, love watching softball. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll pop on a softball game ahead of a baseball game now. And looking at like ratings on ESPN and things like that, the women's college World Series has outproduced the men's World Series the past few years.
Well, it's a different pace, and the girls are
Yeah,
really good, and but it's again, it's a different sport for a different gender,
yeah,
which is awesome.
yeah, but
Unless you're
a
old.
lot of fun.
Hey, if you're old, you're not playing fast pitch because I promise you, the hand eye leaves you. It's in the
Yeah,
process of leaving me right now. I've seen it. I've tried to hit a little bit. It's not there, and so anyway, it's a different sport and a great sport.
yeah, a lot of it does remind me more of kind of like the 1980s baseball with a little bunting, more base running, trying to push the limit a little bit on that side, but a lot of fun to watch, and certainly my daughters really enjoy playing it. But so yeah, not a topic we would normally go through, but something that is certainly important to both of us, means a lot to us, and something we wanted to touch on out there and kind of keep the conversation going.
Hey, maybe we become political.
Political pundits? I don't.
Yeah. I was looking for the word pundit.
No, I do not want to become a political pundit.
Hey, thank
That
you
is
guys for everybody that's listening. We've had some really good numbers, and I think Paul, you've got another state to add to the list because
Ohio.
yeah.
Ohio's on the board. So, hey, shout out to Mina for grabbing Ohio for us, and to our Ohio listeners. So, hey, if you're out there, we've got the 50 and 15 challenge going on. We're trying to reach all 50 states in the next 2 weeks. So, we're actually we've got 32 states knocked off the map. I'll post that on YouTube. And then make sure you're checking out our merch shop as well. Cool sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, tumblers, all that sort of stuff on there. So grab your merch. Make sure you're supporting the podcast. That's one great way to support us if you like what we're doing over here. And then playoff football coming up soon. More championship games. We'll be talking about that soon. But we appreciate you listening today. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Out. Go Pack.